We've been gone for a minute, and the reason for that is that Canadian wildfires suck. Both me and my partner are susceptible to migraines, and when air quality changes, it fucks us. Even through masks, it's starting to get better, though we're still having bad days occasionally.
Well, and your asthma symptoms have actually like cropped up to the point where like it's an issue.
Yeah. Like going upstairs is hard now. I'm not a fan. So we've been gone for a while because we've been dealing with health issues. It really sucks because we were hoping to stream more during June and July to raise money for being able to be off for my surgery. Now, as I've been talking to the surgeons more and also someone who just went through the surgery, it's looking like, well, I won't be able to necessarily work for a minute. The ability to do streams as long as I take breaks is theoretically possible. So it's not the end of the world, but right now we're kind of dealing with some, potential financial difficulties. Now, on the one hand, I'll tell you things on the financial side is, on the good hand, we are relatively safe. We have a decent nest egg, and we're not hurting in any way that necessarily. The big issue that popped up was that I can't work during that time. ZZ's been really strongly pushing off, at least 2 weeks after I get out of the hospital, if not longer. During that time, I won't be able to lift any pounds, and I won't really be able to do too much work. I've been thinking about doing phone sessions so I could be up and walking, which would be fairly good. But again, I can't do those all day, so I might have to just do them for your clients. We can try to do streams, and that's fine. I just might have to take on the hour breaks, and the editors will just have to around them. So there is those possibilities. One thing that did pop up, unfortunately, as of this weekend is, I don't think I've talked about this on stream, but basically, I rent a house to a friend of mine. I make no money on this. This is totally at cost. And basically, I got a call from my friend over the weekend saying that there was water coming in the house. And it meant that, unfortunately, the whole roof is apparently damaged significantly. Apparently, some sort of monstrous critter ended up just tearing a hole. The guy sent me pictures, and it looked like a coked out squirrel dug a hole through it.
Oh no, I didn't see those.
Yeah, I'll show you later. But basically, long story short is, the reason I have this house is not because I'm some bougie renter or landlord or some. The issue is that back when I was with my wife, I've talked about this story on stream before, but basically back when I was with my wife, I bought a house, and I was in that house until 2014 when I had to go to graduate school and I had to move out of the city I was in. The thing is that I needed someone to be in there, so I asked my friend to go stay there and just do it at cost. They literally pay the amount that is the mortgage. That's it. And then they just cover the other bills, and it's good. And because the mortgage is so low, it works out just fine. So basically, long story short, is I found out there's holes in the roof because of some, apparently methed out raccoon. And it's probably going to be several $1,000s, which is not super fun. We might have to do some financing and see if we can't do some, money to raise for streams. So that happened. Now there are positives on the financial end is got donations from Keffels and Brianna Wu to my GoFundMe, and I really appreciate that. Thank you to both of you. Keffels became a patron on the channel, which is really cool. And so that's good. And it's looking like, unless this roof thing kills us, we should be roughly okay, but I'm still going to be pushing because, again, that money is not just for that month. That money is supposed to be going into any of the costs accrued during my surgery. Just because my insurance did approve it, I'm still going to probably have to pay my deductible, which is probably going to be around two grand. And I'm probably going to deal with the fact that I'm going to be out several $1,000s because I'm not going to be working.
And still having physical therapy appointments afterwards and beforehand, and
driving,
pain management, driving.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff there that we're trying to weigh out and deal with, and we still want to see you guys. ZZ's talked about doing some streams on their own. We'll see how that goes.
That's a hard one for us, though. We genuinely like streaming together best.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there was a couple times where I was able to stream, but ZZ really wasn't. And the problem is we really love each other, and I don't think that's not the problem, but the issue is that because we really love each other, we don't really want to make the other person feel left out, and we are both prone to that. And so the issue tends to become, hey, I don't want to stream without you. You don't want to stream without me. So I guess there's not a stream. Buckles. which sucks because ZZ hates to see me get upset, and I get upset because we haven't streamed because this is one of the major ways I express myself. So it kind of sucks on both ends.
Well, and then our chronic illness doesn't always line up with each other either. So, like, I'll get hit with something first and I'll be out, and then Poppy will get hit with it second, but it won't be at the same time. So then that just makes it even more complicated because we're like, okay, well, what do we even do now?
Yeah. So long story short is that's kind of where things are at on the financial end. I can talk more about my health stuff, but do you want to talk more about some of the health stuff you've been dealing with? Because I feel like that'll give people insight as to kind of like the depth of we've been dealing with.
Which set of stuff are you thinking, I guess?
I mean, between the shoulder that you're currently heating, the wildfires in Canada that basically rendered us non-functional, to the nasal infection we couldn't figure out what the hell it was.
I'm not even sure if... Okay, so, like, this last 2 months have been, like, the complicated set of health issues and just everything happening. I don't even know how we've made it through, but somehow, here we are.
Hallucinogenic tea.
Yeah, well, what can you do?
That is satire.
Absolutely satire. So somehow June started, and, you know, we got into June, PMDD started for June, and then, like, the wildfire thing started during PMDD, so I was just headaching in bed the whole time. And then at some point we just had to push through and be like, all right, we're going to the store, we're getting a better furnace filter. Like, that just is a thing we need to do. Doesn't matter if we're in an apartment. Like, we're going to go get a nice one. So that finally helped. Somewhere in there, like, my neck muscles keep seizing up, which is a really hard one because, like, that's a common migraine symptom. And when that happens, you can start getting into a feedback loop. Okay, where your body goes, oh, it's time to hurt. This is all flared up. All right, well, I know what to do now. Here's a migraine. And then it goes, oh, there's a migraine. We're in pain. I know what to do now. Let's go stress out the shoulder muscles. That must be how this goes. Seriously, your body just can just get into feedback loops where it's like, I know what to do. No. And if you don't have enough, like, breaks or ways to kind of, you know, take care of your body in between, then it can just keep stressing itself out. Which is kind of where my neck and shoulder ended up at. Particularly, like, the parts in the back of the neck connect to, like, the trapezius and those back muscles also are here. And because of how large that muscle is and where it all connects, you can also, like, get weird pains, you know, in your lower back or in your arm and your fingers, like I also have. Jeez, I really think it's just been one thing after another, like, this entire month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, we've been basically missing friends, missing stream, just trying to get work done. Like, just trying to keep the bare minimum going. Lots of migraines. And then even at the same time as I'm having symptoms, Poppy's asthma symptoms have been a lot worse too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even just, like, going out in the hallway to do laundry, right? Like, we still have to be careful even just leaving our unit because of everything. Because at this point, the pollution and smoke from the wildfires in Canada have been basically just traveling around, like, this chunk of the US as far as I'm aware. And I say this chunk because, like, I can't just say the Midwest because I'm pretty sure, like, it's going towards, like, the East Coast and then south a bit and then around and some direction, or maybe, you know, I don't know which circle we're going around, but we are going around. Right. And it's been so weird because we'll talk to our friends in other areas, like even Sage. And sure enough, whatever was hitting us, like, for a couple days then moves over to their area, moves over to another state and then another one. And it's like, oh, this is not the fun. I think that's, like,
that's the majority of the health stuff.
Yeah, it's just been wearing on me a lot. I think that's the big thing.
So the other big thing that happened in the last couple months, there's a couple things. Is one, I won't go into specifics because obviously I don't want to fucking roast anybody. Went through a breakup, split up with one of my partners, still kind of reeling from that. That was really hard. A person very dear to me ended up in a really bad situation. And it turned out that was because 3 people decided to act like a cult and treat that situation real poorly. So I ended up losing 3 friends in the span of June, along with a relationship.
I'm in that similar boat too to Poppy.
Yeah.
Obviously, the relationship I'm a metamorph for, but
and then I haven't talked about this on stream a whole lot, but I can talk about it a little bit. Is so, as you guys all know, I am a parent. When I was 19 years old, I met a woman who was about 4 to 5 years older than me, and she was 3 months pregnant, which was weird because we hadn't yet. When I met my kid's mom, I buried every bit of trans that was in me and basically decided to do the whole like heteronormativity thing for a long time because I was A, scared of transitioning, and B, was thinking this was the right thing to do. I was an idiot, but it did give my kid a parent. And subsequently, when my wife passed away in 2004, she died in a horse riding accident. I was left a single parent for a child that was not biologically mine. And so one of the things that this prompted was that, sorry?
Oh, well, and unbeknownst to you at the time, also dealt with a lot of disabilities and needed a lot of extra help. And
yeah, so I was not always been the smartest cookie. And one of the things is I didn't have any idea how autism worked because I don't have it. I knew how ADHD worked. You know, I had that down. But autism was not something I understood. And my kid was pretty autistic. And none of the doctors, the people I took them to, not a single person ever mentioned a damn thing, probably because they're AFAB. So,
well, and back in the day, it was even harder to get information about stuff.
So, yeah. So anyway, so the point being is that I had a fairly difficult time raising my kid, particularly because sometimes the people that I would pick as partners were not the best. And this would lead to a lot of problems. The thing is that eventually I got my shit together. I started going to therapy. I joined a Zen order, started sitting, letting old men with bald heads and sticks hit me, not as a kink. And what happened is between those two things, I started getting my shit together. I also started becoming a better parent. And one of the things that happened in the last couple of years is my kid, who is in their early 20s, ended up starting to go down this really rough path where they were sort of aggressively asserting things about myself or ZZ that were not true. Most notably, there was a lot of assumptions about us engaging in certain types of abuse, most notably financial abuse. My child had a trust fund. When mother died, they had gotten a third of the money from the person's insurance that had been to blame for my wife's death. And that money was put in an account along with parts of a spaghetti fundraiser a friend had done. Long story short is that money was around $27,000. In the span of 2 years, my child spent most of it. Not most of it, excuse me, about half of it. And this is not even including the $24,000 that they spent of the COVID relief money on nonsense. The reason I bring this up is not to disparage my kid, but that this was a reoccurring pattern. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that as of May, things had kind of hit a boiling point. Zena had spent the last 2 years trying to help my kid become more and more independent and getting slighted and treated poorly and being accused of everything under the sun. And none of it was true. And my kid had figured out that if they could just cry at the right decibel, apparently I just dissociate. In fact, we watched it happen several times, and this was done on purpose. We actually got back information from their psychological testing, and I won't go into the specifics of that, but I will say that one thing that does stand out is that this was sort of documented in there, is that there was this sort of tendency to do these things. And the reason why I'm talking about this is not, again, to disparage my kid. I love my kid, but I don't like my kid much right these days. As of late May, early July, my kid found a person to go live with and ended up ripping all of their remainder out of their trust fund. So I literally got online to look at my online banking and found an entire, account that had like 15 grand in it. And it is their money, so that's fine. But I had to shut everything down and lock them out of the account and make sure they didn't take the money that I'd been saving up for surgery, because I'm not having that happen. They had subsequently lied to us where they were going one day and basically just left and have never been back since. They've only returned twice, once to get some stuffed animal orders that they had done that they had sent to the wrong house, and they had come to get the rest of their stuff. They barely said a word to anybody. They have barely texted or interacted, even over Pride. So basically, long story short, is in the span of like a month and a half, 2 months, I lost a partner, 3 friends who I counted as dear friends, or at least 2 of them I did. One of them was an ex who was weirdly bitter. And my kid.
Yeah, no, and this stuff goes for me too.
Sometimes more so, because a lot of times ZZ was the one dealing with Adrian, because again, I would dissociate. One of the things, like I mentioned the abuse claim, the thing is like they literally gave us a letter basically saying things such as, like all of these things that supposedly Zizi did, and like we had like receipts. These are just never happened. Like most of this was nonsense.
I mean, we've talked on this channel about our house meetings, right? Like, no, I have detailed notes
going back that are like saved to the Google Drive. Right?
Yeah. Oh, no, they go back years and years. Like, if there was a question of like what an agreement was, like we all had access to that. All of the notes are there.
So, like, long story short is like, so me and Zizi got really hit with this, and like they got hit harder than I did because they got like a bunch of things. The one I got hit with was financial abuse because apparently my kids' friends asserted that I had been engaging in financial abuse because I asked them to clear with me any charges that went over like $100 in their account because they were not working. There was a finite amount of money in that account, and I asked them to just check in with me. It wasn't like a no, it was a check in with me. And every time they came to me and asked, the answer was almost usually yes. But instead, that was considered financial abuse. For those who don't know the home game, financial abuse is when somebody can take full control of your money. It's like when the wife goes home, she gives her check to her husband, and then he gives her an allowance, and he only gives her enough to be able to do the small things she needs to be able to do because this prevents her from seeking resources or help or things like that. This is not what happened. Over the last 2 months, this is what's been going on, is I'm preparing for like the biggest surgery of my life because I would like to not have bottom dysphoria. I would like to be able to not worry about getting turned on in public. When one of my partners sends me a spicy pic, and I then get basically completely treated like by my kid.
Well, and essentially ghosted. Like they didn't even leave with saying goodbye or anything. They just left.
Yeah, and this is the thing is like I've spent the last like 20 some odd years raising this kid to the best of my ability. I was a dumb kid that didn't have any skills here, and I was deeply in the closet as far as being trans. I come from a family that is deeply broken. CSA for days, absolutely a nightmare, and I kept my kid from all of that. I literally could disown my entire family to keep them away from the horror show that was my family. And they just did this. And again, I'm not asking people to like be mad at them or anything like that. You'll feel how you feel, but like, I guess I'm bringing this up because like when I tell you guys that like it's really been hard to get to stream, it's really been hard to get to stream.
Well, and I don't think we ever got like a chance to like really grieve much of what was going on. I had more time because I kind of was putting pieces together in the last year because we'd kind of just hit a breaking point with them of like, okay, we let you do things your way for a year. Like you haven't done. In fact, you probably moved backwards on a lot of things. And so at some point we were like, no, you need to be looking for a job. You need to actually be putting in applications. You need to actually be working with the services that we brought to you, a year before. And so I was kind of reading some of the writing on the wall kind of thing as this was going along. Because again, this situation involved like more and more obstinance, more and more lying, more and more just not wanting to like be communicative about anything. But like I said, Poppy was associating a lot, and like, yeah, I don't think we ever really got a chance to really grieve anything because of everything going on.
Yeah, because it literally went like kid leaves, falling out happens with at the same time falling out. No, order of operations was Adrian, friend is hospitalized. We do an investigation to figure out what the fuck happened, talking to everybody involved once the person in question is safe, and we find out that 3 of our friends actively hid information from us. And we're actively acting in really weird fucking ways about a particular person, so much so that it may have put that person's life in jeopardy. And then, because we had a disagreement with one of our editors, the partner I had at the time decided to intervene, and in a place where like we were still very much at the
venting and kind of raw from
stage,
the previous stuff.
And it just didn't go well, so it became this big like cascade of things over and over and over and over again. And so the problem is like, and then you have these fucking wildfires hit. Like, okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't gonna out anything without your permission. So yeah, the person that was in the hospital was Sage, and the people that were to blame, I won't name them, but one of them was an ex of ours, and 2 of them were fucking former mods. These people were close to us. We considered them friends.
Oh, yeah.
And they actively hid information and basically started creating a clique off server to separate out and basically start bombarding Sage with negative information. Like, I'm not joking.
Which, especially when you do that to people with anxiety and PMDD, you end up pulling them really hard in opposite directions.
Well, and
right?
it was really funny. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and it creates a lot of like conflict, like the kind you see with like cognitive dissonance of like, what the fuck do you even do? You're in a situation where like people are constantly hyping up, you know, the drama or the problems or the issues, and there's never a point where things are calming down, or like no one is encouraging any kind of like resolution. They're not encouraging like, you know, that things are okay, right? And I'm not saying to lie to anyone if, you know, you truly believe that they aren't, but a lot of this stuff got manufactured and just kept being a stressor continuously. Like there was just no calming down from the issues.
Yeah, what I was going to say was like, and because of the misinformation, this led to a really negative thing. So I've talked about on this channel before that like I identify as plural. What that means is that I am I have multiple personalities, and the other personality I have is a younger girl by the name of Penny. Penny is the one that usually posts on the server announcements and things like that. If you're on there, you'll see it. We usually refer to her as Sharko or Tigger Shark. But basically, Sharko ended up going off really hard on Sage during that situation because of the misinformation campaign that was being done by these folks. And what ended up fucking happening is Penny has this tendency to get really hyper-focused and really go hard on people. And so once she got the information correct, she then went hard on one of the people involved. That person subsequently stepped down from mod immediately because Penny went real rough. Rightfully so, in my opinion. But the issue is that like she still feels bad about going hard on Sage, even though Sage is like fine with it. Like Sage is cool. Just because like she doesn't like being pointed as a weapon at things. Like she's pretty fucking gentle. She was just very fucking protective, and it's really fucking irritating.
Well, I think it's especially hard to be in a position where like Penny gets a close up of everybody's emotions, right? Like you and her both have to share a body somehow, and you know that works out. But like,
well, and we have overlapping memories, and we're complicated.
And if something's showing up really, really big in the body, no, they can both feel it. And then she'll see, you know, me reacting and Sage reacting and other people reacting, and no, like
fuck, had a situation recently where a friend had told me something, was actually telling Penny something at the time, and I was semi-aware during that time, and I got panicked attacked, and Penny had to basically deal with it while me internal. Like it was really fucking weird. I can't describe how fucking weird some of this stuff is when you start playing with it. But like the reality, one of these days we will do a discussion about plurality from our perspective and some of the things that we're looking into. That's just going to be a bigger discussion. I'm not going to get into it now. But
I've been doing some research too to kind of flesh things out and kind of fill in some more data about stuff.
Thank God, because I haven't. I've been reading smut. But yeah, so like, I guess what we're trying to talk about here is like, you know, why we haven't been streaming and what's been going on. And I guess I'm saying this not only because like I want you guys to know what's going on with us, but also because like, so we feel like we at least have to some degree maybe it's not an obligation, but at least a goal to try to stream so that like the people who are paying us through like Patreon or other stuff that like auto pays feel like they're getting something for their money. And obviously people understand shit happens, they get it. And especially if you're a fan of ours, you know that we have health issues. Mm-hmm. And yet this has been a really bad time for us. And as such, it's really made things hard. And so we wanted to give some updates for that. Is there anything else you can think of that needs to be covered? I think we covered all the big stuff, unless I'm missing something entirely.
No, well, like the stuff, I'm not sure we were going to bring it up. The stuff around PMDD with your ex was really rough.
Oh, yeah. So, okay, so I can explain part of this.
Well, and the thing that keeps coming up in multiple ways, and a lot of it's coming up in parts of the story that we've kind of skipped over for time's sake. And privacy's sake for people, but is like confidants and conflict of interest, right? And usually you hear these things in professional settings, but they do apply in relationships. And there's just been a number of people that just don't understand any of this. So
yeah, well, and that's been the theme. Another theme that's been there is like policing people's mental illness. So like one of the things that's a big important thing we'll talk about in another segment, but it's kind of important here too, is if someone is dealing with a trigger, I mean a legitimate capital T PTSD kind of trigger, or something equivalent, say like volume raising due to like PMDD because their emotions are so spiked due to the hormones or whatnot that they don't realize they're actually kind of like nearly like either shouting or at least being a little more aggressive. There are times legitimately when ZZ's in PMDD where I literally have to go, hey, like, you need to take it down like a couple decibels. And like ZZ trusts me enough to know that like, unless we're in the middle of a fight and I'm being a bitch, like, usually it's like, no, I'm just letting you know.
Yeah. Well, even if it is in the middle of a fight, I try to quiet down. I really, really do. And this is also testosterone in my body, at least, interacts with PMDD in interesting ways. So
long story short is like part of the falling out that happened with this person was that like ZZ got basically triggered. The person tried to put down a boundary but didn't understand how boundaries work. And so it became this like thing where basically ZZ was being asked to to not do a behavior that ZZ couldn't always control or be aware of because it's part of their mental illness, which is a double bind. Like it's literally just it's that you're asking for like one of the Herculean impossible tasks. Like it's something that like it requires someone sometimes to actively point out to them. I'll see if I can find this because we'll bring this up in the other one too. But this was a fun thing. This is actually related to also a situation with a person I was role playing, but I won't mention.
Are you looking for the boundary thing?
This is right here.
Got it.
So me and ZZ are having this conversation in our kitchen, and we need to reiterate for people: boundaries are not things that let you tell other people what to do. They are statements of what you will allow around you or you disengage. They are not power plays to control other people. Now, if someone crosses a boundary, you can ask them for a behavioral change so they don't cross the boundary again. But you are asking for that, and if they aren't willing to reciprocate, then you fucking leave or disconnect. People use boundaries in this shorthand, and it's stupid. And the shorthand being control here.
Mm-hmm.
ZZ's point is that calling it a boundary escalates the situation and actually obfuscates the real issue. You didn't break that person's boundary. They felt left out or some other situation. So maybe we got to cover this on the channel because y'all are using the term boundaries wrong. This is something that kind of happened because this is related to the Jonah Hill stuff. This is related, which we may cover at some point. Mm-hmm. This is related to a situation that I had happen with another furry who acted really weird to me in DMs, and like, I'm not going to get into specifics because fuck her. And then it also happened in this situation where like people will use boundary as a way to sort of enforce behavior.
Yeah, when really what they mean is I feel hurt right now, I feel left out, like, or I didn't like how this was handled, right? Like any number of things.
Yeah, and so long story short is like the bound, like if the way you actually hold to a boundary is if the person doesn't either isn't willing to hear the the behavioral change, or they're not willing to acknowledge that boundary, you get the fuck out of there. You stop associating with that. Like that's your control mechanism, not in the sense of like a ultimatum, but in the sense of I'm not going to allow this to be around me. And when
you are in control of yourself. You are the
Correct.
person who is in charge of and responsible for you.
So if someone's in that situation, the best thing is I'm unable to deal with the situations. Well, yeah, it's like you're legitimately, I feel like you're crossing a boundary of mine. I really don't like when people treat me like this. Is there a way to alter that behavior? And if not, I'm going to go. Like, that's a fair thing to say. It may not be comfortable, but it's a fair thing to say. Christy asked, genuine question. Are you too scared that any of the people you're talking about in this segment will watch this and may or may not go behind your backs and make scathing remarks about you online? Christy, everybody makes scathing remarks about me behind my back.
That's true.
I just accept it at this point. Like, literally, every person that I've dated since the channel started, and possibly before then, has had a weird falling out with me where they have then subsequently lost their shit. And again, you can argue that sometimes these relationships fail because I have problems. No argument. I'm willing to take my responsibility on that. But like, literally, exes will just start talking shit about me behind the back. And like, and also, like Pluvius is 1000% correct. Like, we literally have actively defended Vosh and Keffels. Of course people are going to talk behind our back. And we didn't actually even mention the specific people. We didn't bring up anything that would be identifiers. So if they get butthurt about it, it's them just being mad because they don't like our framing of it, which why would they care? They already are gone.
Well, and one of the things, one of the reasons we do disengage from people is because there are some boundaries here. Yeah, not everybody's going to be happy when you lay down boundaries, but fuck, I would rather actually address the situation than not. Don't get it wrong. Like, part of the really hard part was like, in the case of Poppy's ex, like, I really wanted to give benefit of the doubt, like, constantly. Like, I really, really did. Like, no, I get that. that triggers happen, that flashbacks happen. I know that PMDD is not fucking easy to deal with for anyone. Like, it doesn't matter if you're the person with it or like this is a family member or a friend or somebody close. Like, there's a lot of like, it is really, really hard to figure out all of what's going on when you're in that mode with altered hormone states and your body's not reacting to things like it should. Oh, yeah, point being, no, a lot of people get kind of cranky when you call the boundary and stop giving in and stop like engaging. But also that's kind of the option. Better than staying stuck in a fucked up situation if you can avoid it.
And we'll be talking about this in a little bit when we get to the other segment, where we'll be talking about how people will weaponize therapy language. Because they will use this shit to do some really abusive shit. We will hold off till that segment. Philosopher's Lover says, yeah, I had someone who I thought was a friend gaslight me via therapy speak boundary abuse some time ago, some months ago. Took me time to disentangle. Yeah, no, that's 100% a thing.
Well, and I'm still going to caution people, like, when you're using this, it's still important to make a judgment of, okay, how severe is this thing? How big of a deal is this thing? And is this boundary something that I can wait for the other person to make a change in their behavior for, right? Sometimes the ask of behaviors are, really simple, easy things. Hey, can you stop doing XYZ or saying XYZ? Or, I really don't like being referred to in this way. Fine, cool. Other things are like, your partner might be neurodiverse and dealing with ADHD. I know this one comes up for both of us, where we're like, we both have our pet peeves and things that annoy the ever living shit out of us. Okay, like, we'll work on things, but that doesn't mean like the outcomes are going to be perfect, and we just accept that. We know that we're still going to be working at something, even if there is an ask, to work. Even if there is an ask for it, even if we aren't perfect. I mean, there we go.
Anyway, Storm question, is it crossing boundaries when you just are trying to talk to someone after they do something? I don't want to act like it's out from nowhere, but it felt like it came out of nowhere. So I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you'd have to be more specific about the situations.
So boundaries are things that like should be able to be commonly known. Like, there's some obvious like societal ones, like they don't go up and like pull on some random person's hair. Okay, like there are some obvious physical boundaries. Don't go asking people about their genitals when you don't know anything about them. This happens to trans folks a lot. Some of this stuff should be obvious. Other things, you kind of need the person to like have told you about it or to know some way that it is there.
Yeah, I guess the thing is that like one of the things I would say with like the crossing boundaries thing is like just trying to talk to them after they do something, unless they've expressed a boundary specifically saying that they don't want to talk or they don't want to engage, I don't really think there's a boundary there. Like, when you say they did something, it would really come down to what they did. And specifically, like, are you talking about they broke a boundary of yours? They acted in a way towards you that was inappropriate? Are you talking about like there's a question about what the actual actions here are, but again, I never think engaging is a violation of a boundary unless a boundary has been stated. And the other thing is that so there's kind of like this weird Schrodinger's cat thing that goes with that, which is I can break a boundary I don't know about, but I think that has to be weighed out differently than a boundary that I do know about. If I don't know about the boundary, my ignorance is different than my maliciousness. And so I think it's a really good idea to if you step on, someone's like boundary, then yeah, you should probably like deal with that. But again, there's a lot of nuance here as far as like your situation you put up, because it's very vague. Go ahead, Kisses.
Yeah, I always suggest checking in and seeing if people are available after they've done something, because you're probably like making guesswork of whether or not they have calmed down enough to actually have a conversation with you. But that's not necessarily a boundary. That's just, hey, you're probably going to have some better results. One of the things with PMDD that a lot of folks will do is they have personal rules about not making decisions during PMDD. No big decisions about, relationships, friendships, finances, whatever. They wait for PMDD to end and then evaluate afterwards. And so I think that's a good example of a boundary that not everyone may know about, but is still there. And that might be why you get like hey, like this is not happening right now.
Yeah, I guess My thing is, let's see, actually, Satan said, I had an issue with a friend for a long time where they implied me having boundaries regarding some of their behaviors was a malicious act on my part, leaving the relationship and all the emotional manipulation tied to it, some of which was tied to them trying to dictate my identity to me, taught me a lot about boundaries and how they're legitimate. Yeah. It's the problem is like, if you make so here's the thing. If you make a boundary saying, I don't really like this behavior around me, or I don't like this particular thing, PMD is premenstrual dysphoria disorder, Kiwi Burb. It is a disorder that happens to AFAB people. It causes during the pre-time before their period, before their menstruation, basically it causes them to experience really strong mood swings, very aggressive mood swings, anger issues, etc. But yeah, like, so the issue with like a boundary is that like if somebody's he's saying that your boundaries are causing a problem or they're malicious, 90% of the time think that's just controlling bullshit on their part. Now there are times where people will, and we'll talk about this, where when a person will use a boundary as a means of control mechanism, and if you're getting the sense of that, then yeah, you can tell them to go shove it. Yeah, I just think it really comes down to like the specifics and the nuance, and it sounds like you guys have all dealt with people who are really bad about boundaries or try to challenge you on them, and I hate that for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, so the point I was trying to get at is, like, I really didn't want help managing my PMDD symptoms from Poppy's, ex at the time, at this point. Because a lot of the concern was putting Poppy, especially in a bad position, and having there be a conflict of interest, right? If I am venting and I am very unhappy and I am cranky with something that Poppy did, okay, well, we have stuff in our relationship. We know how to handle that. We know how to weather through it and, have resolve afterwards. But with a person who's only in a relationship with Poppy and not one with me, well, it's kind of like Poppy losing, like, their confidant or, like, the person that they should be able to go to about things or that they should be able to look for help from, right? It puts the person who's trying to help both of us at the same time in a really conflicting spot that is between us. And that's not where I think, like, another partner who's off over at, like, on another branch of the polycule needs to be. God, trying to explain conflict of interest and all of this stuff to, like, in terms of relationships at least, everyone has been, at least seemingly everyone has been exhausting, because it's been a number of people in a number of situations the last few months we've been dealing with this.
Well, I realized that one of the big issues with that whole situation was to give you context, what the issue was is that we found out that there were people in our friend group that were confidants to multiple people within our polycule, and that shit doesn't fly with me. If you've ever studied psychology, you know about a term called triangulation, which is when people will offload their stress by going to a third party. The best example of this is when a mom and dad are fighting, and rather than going to each other and dealing with the fucking conflict, they instead go to
the kid.
They go to their kid. Now, this is why I think that if you're part of a couple, let's say a monogamous couple, I don't think both members of that couple should go to the same confidant. They should go to separate people, because that offloads things and the person doesn't feel like they're having their loyalties tested. It's a lot better.
Well, and then, especially in cases of mental illness, you don't have this person having to go, okay, well, wait, who did what? How do I even make any judgments about this? And maybe they are fighting really fiercely. Like two sides of the couple are. Like, how do you even deal with that? It's not an easy answer.
Yep. And so the thing is that when I tried to point all that stuff, all that shit about like triangulation and trying to point out like people are doing this, what I found really bizarre was the fucking straights that were the problem, like usual. Basically, one of the people in question was like, "Oh, I do that with all my friends' couples." I'm like,
well, this is a person who I'd had specific negotiations with about what being a confidant for me actually like means, because I'm really fucking careful with that shit. Because if ZZ needs to vent about me and someone decides to weaponize that shit, it looks real bad. Because the problem is ZZ is never trying to tear me down or do anything to hurt me or make me out to look like some monster. But there are people who will legitimately do that because I'm a trans woman on the internet that has a political voice. And PMDD, of course, is the disorder of very, very intense anger. And it is very easy for people to assume that if my anger looks like it's a 10, they assume that the situation is a 10, even if I tell them it's not. Even if I tell them, like, no, this is probably a 2, it's probably really minor. Like, at some point I get the forethought around and I'm like, no, we've calmed down, we've talked it out, it's fine. But people will still assume that it's a 10 and still take issue with my partner who's a trans woman and use her trans woman status against her.
So we'll have more update videos as time goes on. We'll be letting you guys know what's going on. The hope is that we're going to try to stream more this week and do small streams. We want to get to this last segment and then, you know, give CZ time to rest. So
we also want to look into doing some more of the mental health segments that we've been meaning to and mix those in with some of the political stuff.
Yep. So we will talk more about boundaries in a little bit, and there'll probably be a future segment just on them. So anyway, we love you guys. Thank you for hearing us out on the updates and just being patient with us and for liking the channel and being here. We're almost to 9,000 subs.
That's cool.
When we hit net 10,000, I will be doing the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodline stream. I will play through that entire fucking game in a day. So we are going to end this segment here so we can get to the next one. So with that said, we'll see you guys in the next video.